we need to have this middle 70% of the country who has an attitude of live and let live, and they just kind of silent and let things roll along. I think we need to wake those folks up and say, hey, you know what? Whatever you believe, you need to start speaking out. You need to start saying what you really believe. I hear all of these folks saying, vote, just get out and vote. I think that's a bad piece of advice.
Really? Why?
Because you don't want to just vote. You want to make an informed vote.
Dr. Phil went on The Young Turks, and man, he dropped some serious truth bombs. But here's the thing. He missed something crucial. Dr. Phil is out here saying people need to wake up and start making informed votes. And that's spot on. But it's not just the left that's benefiting from keeping voters uninformed. It's corporate politicians on both sides. Dr. Phil might be calling out the left, but the corporate right is playing the same game.
Because I agree. Ideally, we have a merit-based system, right? But you also have to kind of take a step back and look at our cultural landscape and the kind of behavior that tends to get rewarded that infuriates me. And I think a prime example is actually someone who came on your show, that Cash Me Outside chick, right? That woman, she's a multi-millionaire now. Multi-millionaire, you know? And she was brought on your show by her mother because of her bad behavior. And her bad behavior became a national sensation. And then she went off to make a lot of money off of her whole persona and everything. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, what can we do to change the culture so bad behavior doesn't get rewarded?
Well, you know, you read the book, and you know, I wrote it down. It's one of the most fundamental principles. I put it in the book. Number 3, don't reward bad behavior or support conduct that you don't value. That's one of the most fundamental principles of psychology. You don't reward bad behavior, because the behavior you reward, you're going to see again and again and again. You withhold reward, or you introduce a negative to that person, they're going to stop doing that. You know, it's true with rats. You put a rat in a cage and they push a lever and get a food pellet. You know what? They're going to push that lever again. They push a lever and get shocked. They're going to, oh, don't push that lever.
But we keep giving the pellets to the bad people. Like, that's my point,
that's
right?
That's the whole point. We do.
And it's in every facet of American life. It's not just in pop culture or entertainment. It's also in our political system. I think a lot of bad behavior gets rewarded in our political system as well.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about Dr. Phil's back and forth with Anna Kasparian. She brought up the Cash Me Outside girl and claimed our culture rewards bad behavior. But here's the catch. Dr. Phil himself launched her entire career. He gave her the platform that started it all. So while Anna Kasparian blames woke culture, Dr. Phil played a big part in making her famous. And honestly, if the marketplace is rewarding her, whether you like it or not, that's how a merit-based society works. The market decides.
What I'm saying is, when I'm saying we need to have this middle 70% of the country who has an attitude of live and let live, and they just kind of silent and let things roll along. I think we need to wake those folks up and say, hey, you know what? Whatever you believe, you need to start speaking out. You need to start saying what you really believe. I hear all of these folks saying, vote, just get out and vote. I think that's a bad piece of advice.
Really? Why?
Because you don't want to just vote. You want to make an informed vote.
Agreed with you on that, yeah.
Don't just vote. Don't just say, oh, you know, go get out there and go hit the lever. And I've been beating the drum that you need to be an informed voter, and you need to vote the ticket from the bottom up, not the top down. If you really understand how this works, your life is impacted by local offices as well.
Sure is.
If you're in the park and there's a dog that attacks the lady that lives down the street who's got her child in a stroller, you know what? You need to find out if that dog catcher, I guess they call them animal control now.
They do, yeah.
If that person is allowing dogs to be roaming around and attacking children, find out, was that a one-off, or is that person not doing their job? Is he or she not doing their job? And if they're not, then don't vote for them. If you've got judges who aren't enforcing the law fairly, equitably, and doing it in a way you value, then don't vote for that judge. If that DA's not doing their job, if you think they're being too heavy-handed, then don't vote for them. If you think they're not enforcing the law enough, then don't vote. Find out who in your world is behaving a way that you hold near and dear to your heart, and vote and do that.
Dr. Phil also made some strong points about a merit-based society, and I fully agree. You should get paid based on the value you bring, plain and simple. But here's where Dr. Phil misses a bigger issue. The corporate left and corporate right are both guilty of undermining meritocracy with things like DEI and equity initiatives. Both sides are propping up people who didn't earn it, and that's killing the very foundation of merit.
From the bottom up, that's where your life is impacted.
I mean, I honestly didn't really, that message didn't really resonate with me until about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Because local politics has changed so much where we live. So you're right about that.
Well, Obama said that really well. Well, I saw him talk about it one time, and he said it better than I did, but he really talked to people about making informed votes and voting from the bottom of the ticket up. I thought he made a good point.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but you know, you said politics you're not that into, you care more about culture, but Dr. Phil, politics is the culture in a lot of ways, and the culture is the politics, right? So I wish we didn't have the culture wars that we have, but we do, and oftentimes they're used to distract us. So while the politicians then serve their donors, et cetera. But so, for example, you said government is too big, but too big how, right? So for example, is the government too big when it says you can't get an abortion? Because that's the government getting between a woman and her doctor and saying, I'm going to make the most personal decision of your lifetime for you. Big government's going to do that. The people who say that they're for small government support that decision, and that doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. But I say it this way. I've dealt for 20 plus years.
Take the open borders issue as an example. Both corporate Republicans and Democrats support this open door policy, which is one of the biggest examples of DEI in action. There's no merit in it. People come in and they're fast-tracked to citizenship. Meanwhile, those who earn their spot in the system are getting pushed aside.
Years on the air and 45 years in my professional career with people that oftentimes make, I think, a huge mistake of inviting the government into their lives. Like, I have people come on and they got a marital situation that's falling apart. They have children. They have a custody dispute, and one or both of them say, "Well, we'll just go to court and let them decide." And I go, "Oh no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to invite the government into your private life if you can keep from it. You need to go sit down and try to resolve this. Get a private mediator if you have to." But that judge up there, he or she is not King Solomon, and they're just human beings. And they're in particular, they're not trained in this particular area. So when I say government's too big, we are to blame. We invite government into our lives too much. You'll have a judge up there, and maybe he or she has a son or daughter that went through a divorce and got burned in a custody situation. Maybe the week before, they've got a chip on their shoulder, and here you are in a similar situation, and they take it out on you. You have no idea what you're getting into in a situation like that. When I say government's too big, I'm talking about that kind of thing. We have so many people in government that are not elected and can't be unelected that are dictating the outcome in our lives because they're bureaucrats that are appointed into positions passing regulations that are affecting our lives, whether it's in the IRS or whether it has to do with state regulations concerning what we're able to do with whether it's how we take out our trash or what we do in our schools. These aren't people that we elected.
The Federal Reserve. We didn't elect
Exactly, the
chair of
Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
These are people that were appointed, and it's real hard to fire them. So we've got people that we didn't choose that are dictating so much of what happens in our lives.
But we do need rules. So for example, you got you mentioned the IRS. If you don't have enough rules at the IRS, well, the rich are going to cheat on their taxes, and they do, right? So then, for example, Biden in the beginning brought in a lot more IRS agents because the rich were, it's not anti-rich, right? You want to be rich, fantastic, I love it, I want to be rich, right? But it's when you got people cheating on their taxes and it's costing us.
When it comes to wages, Dr. Phil was absolutely right when he said it should be about value. The government needs to step back and just regulate like a referee, not control who gets paid what. You bring value, you get paid. That's the system working. But policies from both the left and right are pushing equity over merit, and it's wrecking the market. Oh, and one more thing. Taxation is theft. I fully stand by that libertarian position. We're being taxed to fund all sorts of nonsense, whether it's sending money overseas for wars we shouldn't be involved in, or pushing woke policies instead of dealing with real problems like the border and crime. And Dr. Phil didn't touch on this enough, but it's a huge issue because taxation is one of the clearest ways the government is taking from hardworking people. What do you think about Dr. Phil's appearance on the Young Turks? Is he right that voters need to be more informed? And do you agree that both sides are responsible for the mess we're in? Let me know in the comments below.